Today on our 2017 Coachman Pursuit on the Ford F53 chassis, we're going to take a look at and also show you how to install the Roadmaster rear anti-sway bar. Part number is RM-1139-146. Now here's what our sway bar is going to look like installed. Now the need for a sway bar comes from motorhomes, just like what we've got here, that have higher centers of gravity. So as we're traveling down the road, we get a crosswind that wants to tip the top of our RV side to side. Uneven pavement, ruts in the road. There's several symptoms like you're passing semis that start that sway in your coach. With our upgraded sway bar in place, we get a connection point from our axle right here up to the frame, and that happens on both sides, here on the passenger side and also on the driver's side. Now the way the sway bar helps to control that, by having those two connection points, let's say your RV sways towards the driver's side. As it sways, it pushes down on this side of the sway bar. And when that happens and this side of our sway bar gets pushed down, that transfers that energy all the way through the bar and will pull down on our passenger side. So again, that's helping to control that sway. As one side goes down, it wants to pull the other side down with it. Now the sway bar is designed to work with all of our factory equipment. You can see here's the factory sway bar. This is 1 3/8 inches. With the Roadmaster sway bar, we're going up to 1.5 inches. So we're getting significantly more size, but the material construction is much different. We've got a 1020 standard steel for our factory sway bar. We're going to have a 4140 chrome moly on our aftermarket, our Roadmaster sway bar. Chrome moly is a stiffer, harder material, so it's not going to flex as much. Also, our bushings have been upgraded. The factory bushings are rubber, which tend to be pretty malleable and will over time crack. Upgrading to a polyurethane bushing is still a soft material, but it's not so malleable that our sway bar is going to be ineffective, and it's not so rigid that it's going to reduce our ride quality. Now the polyurethane is also much more resistant to the hazards we find on the road, whether it's salts, oils, gases, and it's designed not to deform. Over time, the hole in a rubber bushing will elongate. The polyurethane is going to help to reduce that. Now that we know how it works, let's head out to the test course and we'll see it in action. Let's start without the sway bar installed. You can see we've made a straight yellow line on top of our axle and then a rounded mark on the back of our jounce bumper. That's going to give you a really good idea of the movement between the frame and our axle. Before our sway bar is installed, as we do our slalom or side-to-side movement, you'll see how that comes together and separates, comes together and separates. As we do our wider sweeping corners, you can see how we get a lot of lean from the RV, and it just is kind of held there in that position. On the solid bumps, you're not going to notice a big difference, but there is a slight tighter feel as we go over them. On our alternating bumps, we should see a much bigger difference. As our wheel falls off of that bump, it's going to draw down the other side, helping to keep everything level and keeping that sway to a minimum. Now to begin our installation, we've got a cross member here. These are our rear wheels. And you'll see 4 bolts that hold that cross member in, 4 here on the passenger side, 4 on the driver. We need to remove both lower bolts that we have, and you may need to allow your axle to hang slightly to allow the top of your leaf spring to come down and clear. Once those are clear, we'll use a 21mm socket and get those removed. And we'll pull those bolts out. On the back side, you're going to have nuts that have keepers on them. You want to hang on to these. We want to reuse those. One of our end link mounting brackets. Our bolts are going to go right through those holes, and that's how we're going to secure this to our frame. So we want to lift it up, align it with our holes, place our bolts through. Then we can get our nuts started on the back side of each one, and we'll want to secure those down, then torque them to specification. Now let's head over to the driver's side and we'll do the same thing there. Now we'll get our bushings placed onto the sway bar itself. There's going to be some grease that comes with it. You'll want to use that and fully coat the inside of the bushing. If moisture happens to get in between this style bushing and the steel, it can cause squeaking. So it's important you get a good coat inside. You'll notice the bushing has a split in it, so you'll be able to separate that out and slide it around the sway bar. Now our clamps will slide right around our bushings. Now with the bushings on our sway bar, we're ready to remove the bolts in the lower shock eye. It's going to be right here. Use an 1.125" socket and wrench. And just let those rest down out of the way for now. Now we'll do the same thing for the driver's side. Now here on the back of our shock mount, you'll see the 2 holes we'll be mounting our saddle bracket to. For the upper hole, we'll use our hex head bolt with a flat washer on it. For the lower hole, we're going to need to use the button head bolt. You can see that washer's flat spotted. That should face downward. We'll do that on our driver's side as well. Now with the help of an extra set of hands, we're going to get our sway bar lifted up. We'll guide those saddle brackets right onto the bolt. And we're going to place on a flat washer on the upper with a lock nut. And we can do the same thing for the bottom. We just want to be sure to use the flat spotted washer. Now we're going to use a 7/32 hex bit and a 9/16 inch wrench. We're going to tighten both of our lower bolts. Then we'll use a 9/16 inch socket and wrench for our upper bolts. Once we have them snug, we want to torque them to the specifications listed in our instructions. Now you're going to compress your shock back in and slide your bolt back in. You'll want one flat washer here on the inside, another one on the outside, as well as your lock nut. Now we'll get these tightened down and torqued. Now we'll get our end link shackle put in place. You see the wide end is going to fit right around the end of our sway bar. And you'll have a little bit of that lubricant left over. I like to go ahead, just place some in there. Ain't gonna hurt anything. Place our bolt through, put our nylon lock nut on the other side, do the same thing over on the passenger. Now we can apply a little bit of our lubricant to our bushings here on the end link. And we'll secure it to the end link bracket the same way we did to our sway bar. Now just to make sure you have plenty of clearance, we're going to install this bolt with the head this way, so it'll be nice and tucked in close. We can do that on the passenger side as well. Now we're going to tighten down all 4 of our bolts supporting our sway bar. You just want to ensure you don't over tighten them. Just get them down snug, then use your torque wrench to finish them off. Now with everything torqued down properly, that's going to complete our installation of the Roadmaster rear anti-sway bar. Part number RM-1139-146 on our 2017 Coachman Pursuit on the Ford F-53.
Thanks for watching. Click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at Etrailer.com and leave us a comment if you have any questions.